It's 5 p.m. across India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India Global, bringing you all the day's big stories from across India and the world. My colleague Ollie Barrett is joining me from London. Ollie, how are you?
I'm very well, Shubhendu, thank you. Probably in a slightly better frame of mind this British lunchtime than the UK Prime Minister, but we'll get to that in a second. It is 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe, and coming up in the next 30 minutes, we have that major blow for a key plank of UK government policy. Presidents Xi and Biden to meet, and an MOU between Delhi and Washington. First, the headlines.
Israeli forces carry out operations against Hamas in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. Allege Hamas has a command center underneath the hospital. Presidents of world's strongest economies, US and China, to hold talks on the margins of APEC summit in San Francisco, focus on mending strained ties. UK Supreme Court upholds ruling that UK's Rwanda migrant plan is unlawful. Big setback for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's immigration policy. First semi-final of the Cricket World Cup underway in Mumbai. India marches towards a big score against New Zealand. Updates from the Israel-Hamas conflict. Israeli military is carrying out an operation against Hamas in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. It has urged all members of the terrorist organization present in the hospital to surrender. The Israeli military conducted raids in self-defense against Hamas at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital on Wednesday. Israel believes that Hamas has a command center underneath Al-Shifa hospital, the biggest in Gaza, and uses the hospital and tunnels underneath to conceal military operations and to hold hostages.
IDF forces are carrying out a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in a specified area in the Shifa hospital. The IDF is conducting a ground operation in Gaza to defeat Hamas and rescue our hostages. Israel is at war with Hamas, not with the civilians in Gaza.
IDF forces included medical teams and Arabic speakers who have undergone specified training to prepare for the hospital raid with the intent that no harm is caused to the civilians being used by Hamas as human shields. United States supported the safe evacuation of patients at Gaza hospitals, asserting that Hamas should stop using hospitals as a command post.
We don't want to see any civilians, and certainly not babies in incubators or other vulnerable populations, caught in a crossfire. We want Hamas to stop using hospitals as a command post. That would be the easiest way to solve this problem, if they would stop using the civilians that are in hospitals as humanitarian shields.
Israeli army also released video footage of what it said were its soldiers carrying out military operations and dismantling Hamas infrastructures in Gaza. DT India correspondent Sarah Coates joins us from Tel Aviv live. Sarah, what is the latest that you can share with us on Israeli operations in Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza?
Well, look, this raid that is being described by the military as precise and targeted began in the early hours of this morning and has now been going for around 10 hours. We can report, according to eyewitnesses on the ground, that Israeli forces have been bringing people out of this hospital, mainly men, into the courtyard and questioning people. Now, there are also reports, this is according to a doctor that works inside Al-Shifa hospital, that there has been gunfire inside that medical facility. Also, a lot of unverified videos circulating showing fights breaking out inside this facility, although that, I need to say, has not been confirmed. Now, the Israeli military has been sweeping this hospital, going room to room, looking for evidence of Hamas, looking for evidence of these 240-odd hostages who are being held inside the Gaza Strip. At this hour, they say they haven't found any evidence of these hostages, these captives, although they say they have uncovered weapons which they believe belong to Hamas. Now, there's a lot of condemnation coming in following this raid. Human Rights Watch is saying that it should be investigated due to the fact that hospitals are protected under international law, although that would be void if indeed it is found that Hamas has been using this hospital as a military base. Now, also, we've heard the UN aid chief, Martin Griffiths. He says he's appalled, saying that hospitals are not battlegrounds, while the Red Cross says it is extremely concerned.
Sarah, Israel alleges that hospital space is being used by Hamas. Now, what measures are being undertaken to safeguard the patients, especially the children?
Look, there's been widespread reporting on the number of premature babies that are there inside Al-Shifa Hospital over the last few days. The IDF has just released pictures of what it says are its troops going inside this hospital, delivering these incubators to these babies who have before now been pictured taken out of their incubators, put swaddled up next to one another on a bed. It also says it's delivered vital medicine, also milk to these young children who were inside this hospital. And look, the humanitarian situation, though, right across the Gaza Strip remains extremely dire. At this hour, we can report that a number of trucks have now crossed through the Rafah crossing from the Egyptian side into the Gaza Strip, bringing the first shipments of fuel since October 7, although UN aid agencies say that this is simply not enough. They say that there needs to be more fuel to fill up these reservoirs to keep these hospitals running. Right now, around half of the hospitals in this Palestinian enclave have stopped working. Now, we are potentially expecting more aid to flow through the Rafah crossing in terms of medical aid, food, water and that type of thing, while the Israeli military has also announced this safe corridor has once again been opened today. 7 hours it will remain open for residents to get from the north of the Gaza Strip down to the south.
Sarah, thanks very much for getting us those updates from Tel Aviv. Moving on, in a big setback for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's immigration policy, the top court upholds ruling that UK's Rwanda migrant plan is unlawful. Ollie Barrett is in London, gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, over to you.
Thank you, Shubendu. Yes, indeed, a major blow for the UK government coming from the top court in the land, the UK Supreme Court, ruling that the government's scheme to send asylum seekers to Rwanda is unlawful. The court unanimously rejected the government's appeal against an earlier ruling that migrants could not be sent to Rwanda because it could not be considered a safe third country. The Rwanda scheme is the central plank of the Sunak immigration policy as he prepares to face a general election due in the next year and a bit. Well, let's go live now to DD India's Julia Chapman, who's joining me from the Supreme Court in London. Julia, what does this ruling actually mean?
Well, this is effectively the end of the Rwanda plan in its current form. This was a unanimous verdict from the 5 Supreme Court justices today who said that it wasn't a safe country for asylum seekers to be sent to because the risk of them being sent back to their country of origin was too high, and that was a breach of a number of international agreements. They pointed to accusations that there had been extrajudicial killings in Rwanda, that in other such agreements, such as the one between Rwanda and Israel, that asylum seekers had been sent to neighboring countries where they there risked being sent back to their home countries. And there are questions that have been raised about the independence of the judiciary in Rwanda. So all of this means that the ruling was that this was an unlawful plan in its current form. And this was the top court in the country, so there is no more legal recourse for the government moving forward. Now, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said this This was not the outcome that his government wanted, but he says he's still committed to stopping small boat crossings over the English Channel to the UK, one of his key pledges of policy. And he has certainly suffered a blow to that at the moment because of this verdict. But he is vowing to continue, and he could be looking at other options like other countries that may be deemed safe. He pointed out in his statement that this ruling and others from other courts establishes that the idea of sending asylum seekers to a different country is lawful, but the issue at stake here was Rwanda itself.
And Julia, what does it mean politically for the Prime Minister?
It certainly poses another big challenge to him. This was one of his signature policies. It is one that is considered to be quite popular among many Conservative Party voters who want to see the government clamping down on unofficial migration to this country amid record channel crossings last year, a pretty high number this year. The government insisted that the plan people disputed by a number of migrant charities. So undoubtedly this will be a challenge for him and his government as they look to find other ways to be seen as being tough on unofficial immigration. And of course there was a big blow to him yesterday and a big challenge from his former Home Secretary, who he sacked on Monday. In her letter to the Prime Minister that she published yesterday, Suella Braverman hit back at the government for not having a plan B when it came to Rwanda, although Rishi Sunak has said that they're looking at all options on the table and have been preparing for all eventualities. There are some suggestions from the further right side of the Conservative Party that the country could look at pulling out of the European Convention on Human Rights, but the court today suggested that was not the only international obligation that the government had, and even that wouldn't necessarily allow this plan to move forward.
Julia Chapman, live at the Supreme Court. Thank you. Next to the crisis in Ukraine and updates from the conflict with Russia. At least one person has been killed in an overnight Russian missile strike that hit an apartment building in eastern Ukraine, causing heavy damage. 5 others, including a child, were rescued. At least one person is still believed to be trapped under the rubble. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Russia has suffered heavy losses in Avdiivka city, and the setbacks will affect Moscow's broader plans, he says. That statement came as Zelensky's chief of staff, for the first time, acknowledged that Ukraine's forces have established a foothold in southern Kherson, potentially opening a new line of attack towards Crimea.
Russia
is already losing soldiers and equipments under Avdiivka faster and on a large scale than, for example, under Bakhmut. The more Russian forces are destroyed near Avdiivka, the worse the overall situation will be for the enemy for the course of the war.
North Korea has successfully tested new type high-thrust solid-fuel engines for the development of intermediate-range ballistic missile systems. The tests, conducted on November the 11th and 14th, are crucial for enhancing the military's strategic offensive capabilities. Pyongyang announced that a Russian delegation led by Natural Resources Minister Alexander Kozlov is visiting the country. North Korea and Russia have denied any arms deals at a summit in September. US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are both in San Francisco, where they will hold talks later on the sidelines of the already underway Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. It is President Xi's first trip to the US since 2017, and it will be the two leaders' first in-person one-on-one talks since November 2022. The presidents of the world's strongest economies are meeting for the second time in person since Joe Biden took office in January 2021. The meeting agenda is due to resume normal communications between the two countries, including military-to-military contacts.
to get back on a normal course of corresponding, being able to pick up the phone and talk to one another if there's a crisis, being able to make sure our military still have contact with one another. As I told you, we're not trying to decouple from China, but what we're trying to do is change the relationship for the better.
More now from DD India's Patrick Fock from Singapore.
Yeah, certainly a lot of ground for both leaders to cover. The meeting, which is taking place in a vast and remote estate miles outside of San Francisco, as a matter of fact, chosen for its serenity and security, is really the culmination of months of negotiations between Chinese and American officials. Global Times also talked about the warm welcome that President Xi had coming to America. It showed images and talked about people beaming with enthusiasm for the Chinese president. The hope really is that the world's two biggest powers will get ties on a better footing. President Biden, as you mentioned just a moment ago, has made it a key priority to restart military-to-military communications to reduce the risk of conflict between the two countries. Another key priority is he's expected to urge President Xi to use China's influence over Iran to stop it from taking any actions that might escalate the conflicts in the Middle East. Really what's at stake here is trying to inject some momentum into the stabilization of ties between the US and China more than anything else. Chinese media has portrayed President Biden and President Xi as holding the keys to the global economic recovery.
India and the US have signed a memorandum of understanding on enhancing innovation ecosystems as India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal and US Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo met. On the sidelines of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Ministerial meeting in San Francisco, the MOU signals a joint commitment to strengthen the startup ecosystem in deep tech sectors and to promote cooperation in critical and emerging technologies. On the sidelines of the IPEF meeting, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal also met counterparts from Malaysia and from Indonesia. He urged Malaysia, which is the ASEAN coordinator for India, for an early review conclusion of the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement. The Indian minister then held a discussion on deepening bilateral trade and investment ties with Indonesia's coordinating minister for economic affairs. And with that, back to the studio in Delhi. Shibendu, all yours.
Thank you, Ali, for joining us with those updates. And we're heading for a short break, but still to come on DD India Global. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays homage to tribal freedom fighter Birsa Munda on his birth anniversary. And climate activist Greta Thunberg to appear at London court faces charges of public order offence. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. As India remembers tribal freedom fighter Birsa Munda on his birth anniversary today, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tributes to his legacy in the state of Jharkhand. Indian Prime Minister also inaugurated and dedicated various projects worth billions to the nation on the occasion.
अब आज झारखंड की इस पावन भूमि से एक नहीं बल्कि दो ऐतिहासिक अभियानों की शुरुआत होने जा रही है। विकसित भारत संकल्प यात्रा सैचुरेशन के सरकार के लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त करने का सशक्त माध्यम बनेगी। पीएम जनजाति आदिवासी न्याय महाअभियान विलुप्त होने की कगार पर खड़ी जनजातियां, जिसे हम अब तक प्रिमिटिव ट्राइब के रूप में जानते हैं, उनकी रक्षा करेगा।
India proudly unveiled its cutting-edge HAL twin-engine deck-based fighter at the Dubai Air Show, a key addition to the Indian Navy's arsenal. The twin engines enable shorter takeoffs from Indian Navy carriers. India's participation reflects its dedication to excellence and innovation in the aviation showcase, Banale, at the Dubai Air Show.
We are showcasing a lot of DRDO products in the Dubai Air Show 2002-03, and twin-engine deck-based fighter TED-BF is one of the leading technologies which we are showcasing in Dubai Air Show. This is an aircraft which is having the capability of stow bar. This is a carrier-borne aircraft. Stow bar means short takeoff but arrested recovery. This aircraft is capable to land within a short span of 90 meters and take off within a short span of 200 meters. This aircraft, we have got various features for the stowage on the aircraft carrier, that is folded wing. So wings can be folded in this aircraft. This has got a very good payload capacity, that is 7.5 tons. This is having twin engine, and it has got a lot of new avionics, advanced sensors fused into the aircraft to suffice it for the requirement of the modern warfare scenario. This aircraft is one of the challenging aircraft now, which will be replacing MiG-29K for the Indian Navy.
During the second day of three-day Global Media Congress held in Abu Dhabi, media pioneers, forward thinkers worldwide engaged in thought-provoking discussions encompassing digital communication, artificial intelligence, and creative aspects of media. The agenda spanned broader sessions covering print journalism, radio, streaming, and the influence of global figures. With over 15,000 attendees, the spotlight was on the keynote address delivered by Omar Sultan Al Olama, UAE's Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence.
The media sector is going to be one of the biggest benefactors of artificial intelligence around the world. The fact that today we're able to actually produce content at a much higher effective scale than we were able to do in the past. We're able to tailor it to the customer directly or to the reader directly, and we're able to translate it in any language in the world in the highest degree of accuracy, ensures that media entities are going to be able to distribute their content even more widespread. There is a fundamental need for the media outlets of the world to actually focus on being an accredited, trusted source for true information.
Artificial intelligence has taken center stage at Global Media Congress discussions. While a lot is focused on the dynamics between AI and media content, DD India correspondent Vinod Kumar had an interesting conversation with analyst Jessica Groupman on AI and its role in climate change mitigation.
We are now seeing a huge rise of AI being used for energy monitoring, for route optimization, to manage and measure biodiversity or soil health, or be able to benchmark and compare that across lots of different regions. We're seeing other examples in all kinds of different industries as well. It's not just energy or, say, agriculture, but increasingly in product development and product design, in designing for circularity, using, for example, generative AI to be able to look at what are the material needs to design a product, say a pair of shoes, to be more circular, to use less emissions in their production, to enable take-back programs. What are the kinds of consumers or segments that would be open to this? How do we comply with specific regulations? These are all examples of data that can be used in algorithmically better designing products and services.
The 2023 edition of Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue is being held in New Delhi. This year, the focus is on geopolitical impacts on Indo-Pacific maritime, trade and connectivity. The term Indo-Pacific is gaining currency these days. The shift in America's Asia strategy to rebalance regional players has made India a crucial partner in the region. India has made huge investments in the recent past.
Towards this end, I'm pleased to find that various chambers of commerce and industry are also taking initiatives to build synergies across the Indo-Pacific as a whole. The recent initiative of 8 chambers of Indo-Pacific countries that have agreed to work together under a common platform, the Association of Indo-Pacific Chambers of Commerce, aimed at boosting trade and commerce across the region, is worthy of mention, as such cooperative and collaborative mechanisms within the private sector of the region's economies hold out a great deal of promise.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Climate activist Greta Thunberg pleaded not guilty to a public order offence charge as she appeared in a British court following her arrest last month at a protest in London. The 20-year-old was charged by London police on October 18th and released on bail. If found guilty, she could face a fine of up to a maximum of over $3,000. Australian police said they had arrested 28 people in an operation against one of the most powerful criminal networks in the country's history. The year-long investigation involved over 450 police officers. And K-pop superstar 17 performed and spoke at UNESCO Youth Forum. The group performed their latest hits in the Paris headquarters of UNESCO. After their performance, they spoke on the importance of education and solidarity to guarantee a brighter future for young people. That's all for this edition of DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.